All right, and hello, and welcome to our podcast on grammatical phrases. This is another one of our series of podcasts that is designed to help us get back to the fundamentals of grammar a little bit, come up with some common vocabulary for our class, make sure we're all on the same page, and then be able to build those pieces into better and more complex sentences. So today we're looking at grammatical phrases. And so a phrase is a grammatical group of two or more related words that form a unit. So this could be 2 words, 3 words, it could be a bunch of words. But regardless, they are a group of words that act and travel as a unit. So that's one indicator that's going to help you figure out what a phrase is. Another part of phrases is that they do not have a subject and a verb. So they are not expressing complete thoughts, and therefore they cannot stand alone. They need to be integrated into complete sentences, and they are parts of complete sentences. But since they don't have subjects and verbs, they may have elements of those, but they don't have both, and they don't express a complete thought, they need to be integrated into established sentences already. And then the last thing there is that phrases have the force of a single part of speech. So a noun phrase we'll talk about acts like a noun. An adjective phrase acts just like a single word adjective. And an adverb phrase acts in the same way that a single word adverb works. And so even though they are a group of words, they act as a unit. And so we count all of those words in that phrase as a single part of speech. So the first phrase we want you guys to know is what we call a prepositional phrase. And this is a group of words acting as a unit that has a preposition at its head. And the way you remember what a preposition is the idea of maybe what a bee can do to its hive. It can fly through it, it can fly around a hive, under it, over it, between them, among them. All of these words are prepositions. And so if you have a group of words that starts with one of these prepositions, that's going to be called a prepositional phrase. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but that prepositional phrase can then act as an adjective, adverb, or a noun phrase. Another important phrase for you to know is what we call a noun phrase, and this is going to consist of a noun and all of its modifiers. For example, Bob, my best friend, works here. The phrase is my best friend. That travels as a unit. And so at its core, it acts like a noun. It is describing Bob, not as an adjective, but as a group of words that are serving as a noun in this case. Another phrase you should be familiar with is what we call a gerund phrase. And this is a noun phrase, again, with a gerund at its head. And so in case you don't know what a gerund is, that is basically a verb that has ing at the end. But in this case, it's not acting like the typical verb, meaning expressing action. In this case, the ing word is serving as a noun. For example, walking to the beach is fun. The gerund is walking, and the gerund phrase is walking to the beach. That whole group of words acts as a unit, therefore a phrase, and it is serving in this case as the noun of the sentence. So even though it's walking, and it seems like, well, that's a verb, they're walking, moving feet. In this particular case, walking is not the action of walking, meaning the doing of the action. In this case, walking to the beach is acting as the noun, the entire act of walking, the noun of that. So a little confusing, but in this case we have a gerund phrase because it begins with a gerund, which is the verb form ing. Another type of phrase we should be familiar with is what we call an infinitive phrase. And this is where we have a noun phrase again with an infinitive at its head. And again, an infinitive is the form of to plus the verb. For example, to go, to swim, to learn. These are the infinitive forms of these verbs. They're not conjugated, as in, I go, they go, he goes, they went. That's conjugating the verb of to go to the various forms. In this case, the infinitive to go leads a phrase. For example, to learn a new language is an exciting activity. To learn a new language is an infinitive phrase. That whole group of words acts as a unit, acts as a phrase, and since it is led by an infinitive, to learn, then we call this whole thing an infinitive phrase. And so now we look at this and we say, how are these phrases being used in our sentences? One way they can be used is in an adjective phrase format. And so here, this is where that group of words acting as a unit takes on the power of a single part of speech. In this case, the phrase takes on the power of an adjective. And so if we remember correctly, adjectives describe nouns. They give further information about a noun. So here's an example. The toy box in the corner is full. The adjective prepositional phrase is in the corner because it tells us which box? Oh, the one in the corner. So it gives us further information about box. Therefore, it's acting as an adjective phrase. So it is both a prepositional phrase because it starts with the preposition in, and it is acting like an adjective. So it is a prepositional and an adjective phrase. Similarly, if you have a phrase that is acting like an adverb, meaning it is further describing a verb or another adjective, then we have an adverbial phrase. For example, Sally went to school skipping all the way. How did she go? That's the role of an adverb in this case. She went skipping all the way. Now they could have said she went quickly, using a one-word adverb. She went sadly. She went slowly. Something like that. Those are all one-word adverbs. But for whatever reason, they're using an adverbial phrase. It's describing the verb. How did she go? She went skipping all the way. So it is a gerund phrase because it starts with a gerund, and it is acting like an adverb phrase. So the next series of slides are some practice slides. Go ahead and look at each slide and see if you can identify the phrases that are in each sentence, and not only just pointing them out, but challenge yourself. What type of phrase are they, and how are they being used? Go ahead and stop the podcast, and when you're ready, go ahead and click forward onto the answers. And so here we have the answers for that first practice set. We have number 1, Johnny fell into the well, and the phrase is into the well. It is a prepositional phrase because it starts with a preposition, into, and it also acts as an adverb phrase. Where did he fall? He fell into the well. And so it further describes the verb, therefore it is an adverb phrase. Number 2, if you're not careful, you'll be living in a van down by the river. Great line from Saturday Night Live. So here we actually have a couple phrases. The first one is in a van, and the second one is down by the river. So both of these are prepositional phrases, and let's see if we can figure out what type of prepositional phrases. The first one, in a van, tells us where you would be living. So further describes living, so that's going to be an adverb phrase. And then down by the river could either be an adverb phrase, like where will you be living? Down by the river. Or you could look at it and go, you know what? That is an adjective phrase because it's telling you what kind of van or where is the van? Oh, it's the one down by the river. So regardless of how you look at that second one, both of them are prepositional phrases and they act as adverb or potentially adjective phrases.
First off, I am 35 years old. I am divorced and I live in a van down by the river.
Here's another set. Go ahead and stop the podcast and challenge yourself here. Can you identify the phrase or phrases in each of these 4 sentences? And here are the answers to those 4. And one more practice set here. See if you can do these 4. and the answers for the last 4. So as we continue to talk about these grammatical structures, we always want to make sure that we are mentioning how to punctuate them as you add them to your sentences, and your sentences grow in length and complexity. And so 2 different scenarios. If you choose to use a phrase at the beginning of your sentence in terms of some sort of introductory material, then you're going to follow the introductory material punctuating rule, which is, if you have introductory material, that is followed by a comma, and then you get into the rest of your sentence. So for example, at the beach, comma, Johnny ran quickly, something like that. Or, during the storm, comma, the night sky was very dark. So since we're using those phrases as intro material, they need to be intro material, then a comma, then the rest of your sentence. Now, if you are using those same exact phrases later in your sentence, and they're just integrated into the sentence, then there is no additional punctuation needed. For example, you could take that sentence we gave just a second ago and say, instead of saying, during the storm, comma, the sky was very dark, you could just rewrite that and say, the sky was very dark during the storm. And then you have a complete sentence, no additional punctuation needed. You just transition right into your phrase. So a quick summary here. Please just remember that a phrase is a group of words that acts as a unit. So it could be 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever words that are working together. They travel together in a sentence, but they do not have a subject and a verb. They do not express a complete thought. Therefore, they cannot stand alone. They must be integrated into a sentence. And so whether you're writing a prepositional phrase, a noun phrase, a gerund phrase, or an infinitive phrase, and they're acting like nouns or adjectives or adverbs, those phrases must be within a sentence. They can't stand alone. So as always, if you have any questions, please bring those into class. We'll see if we can get those answered for you. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you soon.